Tamara Vrooman is the President and Chief Executive Officer with VanCity. And for those of you who do not know all across Canada, VanCity is a values-based financial cooperative serving the needs of more than 500,000 member owners and their communities throughout BC. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Tamara.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
You know, this is such a challenging time for everyone, as individuals, as, brothers, sisters, mothers, daughters, and community members, and as businesses. And I know VanCity is involved in this in so many different ways, helping out businesses and individuals in your community. COVID-19 is really having a devastating impact on so many businesses and is also fueling growth in others. How do you see the role of business changing in the face of this pandemic?
Yeah, well, certainly it is a challenging time for many, and we're seeing virtually no part of our economy or our community has been untouched by it. And what we're seeing is certainly businesses that have been thinking about making changes are accelerating those where they can. Many are just needing cash flow support to get through this time so that they can think about their business model going forward. But I think the overriding thing that we're seeing, regardless of the sector and regardless of where people are on the continuum, is really a deeper understanding of the role of business, and that it's not just for profits for a few, but it is the key glue that holds a community and a society together, and not just because of jobs and income, but also because of services, supports, social networks, contribution to ideas and the future. All of those pieces are on display at the moment. So I think this is a time where we could very well learn that businesses really are about more than just profits for a few, and they really are about the kind of society and the planet we want to create.
I know VanCity finances a lot of social enterprises, B corporations and such. Do you worry about the fate of Canada's conscious businesses in the face of COVID-19? How close do you think Canada is to losing large swaths of this sector that has really just emerged in the last few decades?
I do think that it is important that we're not naive to the fact that some businesses and some organizations are unlikely to be able to make it through, even though we're working very, very hard to ensure that is not the case. I do, though, see that in our own network that businesses that, for example, have been paying a living wage are having an ability, or using contractors within a living wage, are having an ability to ensure that those resources continue to be available. So we have not had problems, for example, getting additional cleaners for our in-person branch locations because of the ability to mobilize that workforce, which again just reinforces that doing the right things for people in the long term makes sure that those businesses are resilient and capable when they're needed the most. We see that businesses that have developed a good network of partnerships are able to leverage those partnerships at this time, and ones that we're building more resilient and diversified local supply chains are also able to deal with some of the stresses of COVID better than others. So it is a very difficult time for many, many organizations, but we are seeing that the ones that had been paying attention to the fact that you needed to think about how you treated your employees, you needed to think about where you got your supplies from, you needed to think about how you partnered and how open you were with others in your business sector or in your community. Those ones are coming into this a little bit more resilient and have the potential, I think, to do better as a result.
Hasn't always been seen as particularly helpful during financial crises. In fact, the last crisis of 2008, a lot of blame was pinned on the banking sector. How do you think the banking and financial sector could help lead us out of the COVID-triggered economic crisis this time around?
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting question. You know, when you think about what happened in the 2008-2009 situation, it really was a situation where the banks and the financial sector were at the heart of the problem. It really did affect our sector, and it did emanate from our sector. And what happened then? Well, individual Canadians, in our case, and businesses did their part by purchasing more, by taking on more debt, and by getting the economy going and supporting financial institutions, which in turn allowed banks and credit unions to build up their profits and their balance sheets. And so now is a time when those same people, the people in our community, the small businesses that we work with, that we do our part to support them. So at VanCity, we run a very progressive organization from an employee, from a community, and from a climate point of view, but we actually are quite conservative financially, and so we have built up reserves over the past number of years while we've been working to build a values-based business. So now is a time when we have to take those reserves as financial institutions and put them to where they can do the most good, and that is in the hands of ordinary people and small and medium-sized businesses, not-for-profits, and social enterprises that operate in the real economy.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about what VanCity is doing to support communities during the pandemic right now?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been really led by what members are telling us are their needs. You know, as a member-owned cooperative, we're owned by the people we serve, so we've always been about members helping members, particularly in times of need. So we have put a number of things in place, everything from allowing loan deferrals, so allowing people to defer loan payments without being charged extra interest or without it negatively affecting their credit, whether they're a homeowner or a small business or a not-for-profit. That has been key to just creating a bridge over this extraordinary time. We've also waived fees to make sure that people who need to access us remotely or by the phone or ATM don't pay any additional fees for doing so. Electronic transfers are all free. And then today we also allowed our credit card holders, of which there's almost 200,000, to be able to go interest-free for up to 6 months if they are negatively affected by COVID. And credit cards have never been more important. You know, you can't even buy groceries today without doing it online. And so we really want to support all of our members to be able to do that. At the same time, we've also allocated some of our annual profits in partnership with the Vancouver Foundation and the United Way to create a fund, an emergency community response fund that is specifically for not-for-profits and charitable organizations that are helping vulnerable people. So within 24 hours, whether you're a street shelter for homeless youth or you're a food bank that's gathering food for those in need, you're able to apply and get the cash support grants that you need within 24 hours. So that has also been really important. And we also know that some of our members actually have some savings and they're looking for ways to help out. And so we've also created a 12-month guaranteed term deposit for members who have a little extra savings that they want to put with a credit union. It's been very popular in the last 2.5 weeks. We've raised $100 million. We're hoping to raise $200 million in the next few weeks, and all $200 million of that will go towards us being able to support small businesses and individuals in need in our community at this key time. So, you know, I've been really impressed with the work that our staff have been doing. We've also been enhancing our benefits for staff to make sure that they get the support they need. We are an essential service, so that no one's really left behind at this key time. So we come out stronger and prove that a values-based way of doing business not only is the way to go in good times, it's the most resilient in the challenging times.
Really, really inspiring to hear about the list of programs that you've got running. It would be nice to see every bank pick up on some of these. If anyone's listening, I would recommend them, reaching out to you to get more ideas on this, because I think it is so helpful what VanCity is doing. But once we've addressed the immediate crisis, we will need to reboot our economy. Is it possible to rebuild and address the climate emergency at the same time? I know this is kind of controversial with some saying now is not the time to, be pushing a climate agenda, and others saying if this is prime time, we must. What do you think?
I'm definitely in the "this is the time and we must" category. Again, coming out of 2008 and 2009, we did make extraordinary investments in our economy to get it going again. And frankly, my observation is that climate wasn't sufficiently part of that. So we have an opportunity to really, maybe a once-in-a-generation opportunity to really build the kind of economy that we need for the future. And one of the things we're seeing, of course, is what can happen when a global issue that affects all of us is affecting all of us, and climate is no different. So how do we make sure that we're taking the lessons of the pandemic and able to put our investments as we rebuild the economy into ways that make it more resilient and reduce the effects that we have on climate? I think there's virtually no part of the economy that will be unaffected by COVID-19. And so, therefore, there's an opportunity to really put those dollars to work in every aspect of the economy so that we ensure that Canada is a leader in the new economy in a way that we have been in the past in the old economy.
What do you think COVID-19 crisis has helped reveal about our economy and society on both sides of the coin, good and bad?
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear a lot of, and I read a lot of reports that COVID-19 is the great equalizer, and I guess I understand that from a health point of view, in that it has the ability to literally infect us all. However, what I see is it's really showing the huge effects of inequality and income inequality in particular in our society. Those who really only have a couple of $100 between their paycheck and their monthly expenses are highly vulnerable during this time, whether they're a business or an individual. People with disabilities, people who are living in rural communities, people without access to technology, are really disadvantaged during this pandemic. So it really has shown, even in our own organization, the people who earn the least are the people on the front lines helping our members each and every day. We're doing more to support them, as we always have, more so than other financial institutions. But even within our own organization, those that are the lowest paid are carrying the heaviest burden. So we really need to think about what this means for the kind of society and economy that we have going forward, because we need all parts of the economy, whether you're a grocery store clerk, a teller at a bank or credit union, or a emergency room physician, to be able to participate fully if we're going to be able to build a resilient economy. So inequality is really showing up, and it's something we have to address if we want to get this right in the future.
We've been talking about inequality. We've been talking about a climate-friendly economy and building a stronger climate-friendly and more just climate-friendly economy as we move forward. We also hear a lot in the last few years about corporate citizenship and purpose-driven corporations and corporate responsibility, corporate sustainability. At the same time, we're hearing that COVID-19 has really been called an acid test for all those concepts. What do you think a company needs to do to pass that test in the post-COVID-19 era?
I think what we're seeing is that these concepts around a values-based business, around a purpose-driven business models, are more than just words and marketing strategies. They really need to be at the core of how a business functions. And so we're seeing that it's insufficient to just talk about those things and not have the business models and the understanding and the data and the governance and the communication to be able to actually put them into action. So what I do expect is that many businesses will be talking about and are already talking less about profits and more about people and about doing the right thing. We now need to see whether the actions match those words, and that the companies that really I think will be the most resilient through this are the ones that are able, as I said earlier, to mobilize those actions. And I think we as consumers, as investors, as board members, as leaders, as employees need to hold those organizations to account to do what they say they're going to do, not just do it, because that's what's actually driving the change and the any chance of improvement and rebuilding on the other side of the pandemic.
There are concerns expressed that some of the changes we're seeing that are so, supportive of community and shifts in business will be, temporary, and that we go back to business as usual economy after this. If you were to reimagine the role of business in society and the financial sector in particular, how do you hope that happens after the COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, my hope certainly is, I can't quite imagine. I know people say when things go back to normal, even if this COVID-19 crisis were to end tomorrow, which I don't think anybody thinks it will, what we've collectively been through, I think, changes the way we think about things forever. And so going backwards doesn't seem to be a realistic option no matter what. So if we're now focused on going forward, what does forward look like? What have we learned? I think we've learned that we are more connected than we thought we were. I think we've learned that we rely on one another more than we thought we did, and that we've learned that that we need to pay attention to science and to calls for action. Even though they seem distant and remote and unlikely in the future, we need to embed those into our business models. So I think we'll learn that after the pandemic, there was many calls that warned by science that a pandemic was possible and, in fact, likely. But yet we didn't really think about how we would respond and what role business would play and what role finance would play to ensure we were ready. When we think about something like the climate challenge or like income inequality that's in front of us, how do we take the lessons that we've been through and really embed those into the core of business? How do we make sure that finance is being allocated in a way that mitigates those risks rather than just thinking of the short-term returns? Those are all lessons that I hope will come as a result of moving forward after COVID-19 versus going back.
Corporate Knights did a report on how banks are doing at delivering ethical investment options for their clients. And investment funds that invest in more environmentally and socially engaged companies have been found to weather the current economic downturn better than conventional funds so far. Is VanCity finding that to be true? And why do you think
absolutely.
That is?
Absolutely. So in the recent market turmoil that we've seen in the equity markets, both in Canada and the United States, as well as in Europe and globally, because we are the leading provider of SRI and ethical funds, we have found that our members' losses were not nearly as significant as those that didn't invest in sustainable and SRI funds. So it's absolutely in real time proving the business logic that says that when you build a portfolio that takes a look at risk and opportunity in a way that factors in the challenges that are before us with respect to climate and with respect to the way that society functions and supports itself, they're going to be less susceptible to those very risks going forward. And that's absolutely what we've seen in our portfolio.
Tamara, on a very practical level, how can listeners help out? How do you recommend they support the COVID response at this time?
Well, certainly there's lots of ways that people can support. In this time of physical distancing, social cohesion has never been more important, and so there's all sorts of initiatives where we see people helping people by reaching out, by sharing their knowledge, by sharing their experiences, and by supporting local business and local people. So we encourage everybody to do that. For those who are leading a business or owning a business and thinking about, well, I'm just trying to get through, how can I think about these things going forward? There probably has never been a better time to really think about the kind of business you want to lead and how to structure your business to thrive in the future. And there's also quite a bit of support coming from government and also from financial institutions that can support you to retool going forward. So take advantage of the self-isolation time to really be connecting with your network, to connect with your employees, to think about how you want to build your organization going forward. I firmly believe that the ones that will thrive are the ones that have learned through this, that understand that the connection that we have between each other, between our employees, between our communities, and between our planet is not the domain of not-for-profits and government alone, but business, as we're seeing by the economic fallout, has a huge role to play in that going forward. And the businesses that understand that and build that into their business models are the ones that will thrive. And so you get the double bounce of not only building a strong, successful business for yourself and for your employees, but also doing the right thing for your community and your planet.